Here are some key points about waits in WebdriverIO. First of all, you should know that there's automatic waiting for WebdriverIO, meaning that if it's trying to find an element, it's not going to give up automatically. It's going to wait a certain amount of time before it gives up trying to find that element or before it throws an error. For humans, that's not a problem. We simply wait for the page to load, for the element to show up. But for the computer, it needs to know, okay, how long do I need to wait for this element to show up? Or for how long do I need to wait for the page to load? So this is very important functionality that's already built into WebdriverIO. So it's great knowing that we don't have to worry about that. However, there are some scenarios in which you may need to wait a little bit longer for certain things to happen. And that's not a problem for WebdriverIO because we're able to customize how long the wait needs to be for any given scenario. Now, there are two different types of waits that you can use. You can use implicit waits or explicit waits. It is recommended that you do not use implicit waits. Implicit waits are used to apply global wait times. For example, if you're trying to find elements, it's always going to wait a certain amount of time. It's important to note that both of these methods, implicit and explicit waits, are incompatible. So you're going to run into issues if you ever try to use them together because you're going to face longer than expected wait times. And what you should know about implicit waits is that it applies a global wait for all elements for any WebdriverIO action. So instead of using that, what we need to use is explicit waits so that we can have waits at a specific points. For example, when you're trying to wait for an element to exist on a page or for an element to be visible. And that's why WebdriverIO has this value set to 0 by default. They don't want you to use implicit waits. Instead, they want you to use explicit waits. And by default, the wait time is 10 seconds, meaning that if you're trying to find an element, it's going to wait up to 10 seconds for that element to show up. But as I mentioned earlier, you have the option to configure that amount of time that you want to wait for elements or other actions.